Now, WBOC News at 6, Delmarva's news leader.
Delaware prison employees taken hostage by inmates, and police said as of an hour ago, only one of them had been released. Good evening. I'm Paul Butler.
And I'm Steve Hammond. Welcome to WBOC News at 6. So we are continuing to follow this breaking news at a Delaware State prison that is right on the Kent County, Newcastle County line. Department of Corrections officials have confirmed this is an ongoing hostage situation. Details still limited, but we do now know that 5 prison employees were taken hostage at about 10:30 this morning. One of those hostages was released about 2:40 this afternoon. We're told that person was taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The hostage situation happening in the C building on the prison grounds. Police say that building contains more than 100 inmates. The negotiations continue at this hour. That prison in Smyrna and all prisons in Delaware remain on lockdown as a precaution.
WBOC's Kent County Bureau Chief Tom Lehman has been working this story for us all day. He joins us live tonight from Smyrna. And Tom, tensions have been running high in the area, especially among people who live near the prison.
Paul, it's been a busy and tense scene here all day for a lot of people. It's also been one that's been very concerning.
This prison has been around for a long time. This is certainly not the first incident involving the James T. Vaughn Correctional Center. Back in 2010, 2 guards were stabbed by an inmate. That was in 2010. 6 years before that, in 2004, a counselor was raped and held hostage. That situation, that standoff lasting nearly 7 hours in that same prison. A sharpshooter with the Department of Corrections that day ended the standoff by shooting and killing the inmate, 45-year-old Scott Miller. The counselor who was taken hostage, Cassandra Arnold, was a very vocal critic at the time about the lack of safety precautions at that prison. WBOC reached out to her this afternoon to get her take on what has happened. We have not heard back.
Water everywhere. Much of Delmarva still look like this today after yet another night of heavy rain. Which roads, businesses, and homes were hit the hardest? Good evening. I'm Todd Carley in for Paul Butler tonight.
And I'm Steve Hammond. Welcome to WBOC News at 6. If you tried to travel down Route 13 this morning towards downtown Salisbury, you hit a roadblock. Actually, it was a water block as the intersection of Route 13 and Priscilla Street was submerged, and that forced Salisbury police to close down the intersection. That was about 9 o'clock this morning. Let's check in with WBOC's Bill Mish live tonight at that intersection. Bill, drivers not only dealt with this issue this morning, but so did nearby neighbors.
Steve, as you can see, this intersection is still closed. There's still a tremendous amount of water sitting on the road. But I'll be honest with you, in the past couple minutes, a lot of cars don't seem to mind. We saw at least a dozen cars trying to make their way through. Well, the weather is pretty much what everyone on Delmarva is talking about today, and WBOC has you covered. Our chief meteorologist, Dan Satterfield, he's live in Princess Anne. Madeline Overturf, she's live in Salisbury, and Tom Lehman is live in Bethany Beach. And Dan, there's some accumulation there in downtown Princess Anne.
Oh, there sure is, Bill. It's snowing moderately right now. One thing that we've also noticed in just the last few minutes, the wind has really started to increase.
Dan, try to get back in that car and stay warm. We'll check back in a little bit. Moving further north a little bit, Madeline Overturf is live in Salisbury. And Madeline, last time I checked in with you, the Salisbury snow was not just falling, it was flying pretty good.
Oh, and it still is, that's for sure. I mean, you can see it all around me. And just like Dan was saying, the roads are what we want to talk about here. So take a second here and look down. I'm going to step down into the road so you'll see how deep my boot goes into it.
WBOC was the only station to show you this raid. Now we're learning more about the raid and its connection to what authorities call incredible corruption at Maryland's largest state prison, the Eastern Correctional Institution. Good evening. I'm Paul Butler.
And I'm Steve Hammond. Welcome to WBOC News at 6. And as we dig deeper into the indictments from ECI, more details are emerging about how this drug and smuggling operation worked.
Now that includes how one home in Salisbury is tied into the big picture. Now WBOC's Shoshana Gaines, Todd Carley, and Bill Mitch are all helping us get to the bottom of the corruption. First, we go to Shoshana live in Salisbury. And Shoshana, you were at the raid yesterday morning conducted by the FBI and Maryland State Police. You know who lived at that house and his connection to one of the men inside ECI.
Paul, the man living at this house is 51-year-old Eugene Boeing, according to court documents. Now, his role, according to the indictment, was delivering contraband to his son, Orlando Boeing, inside of ECI.
All right, Tashana, thank you. There are 5 other facilitators, as they're being called, from Salisbury, also charged with helping to smuggle drugs or other illegal items into ECI. And here are pictures of 3 of them: 29-year-old Leandris Higgins, 29-year-old Darren Dale, and 23-year-old Markayla Reynolds. Also, 23-year-old Shavia Savage and 35-year-old Angel Whittington. Those are 5 of the 27 civilians who prosecutors say helped to coordinate the flow of illegal items into the prison. WBOC's Bill Mitch joins us live tonight in Chopper 16 over the Eastern Correctional Institution. And Bill, if an inmate got out of line and tried to rat on the operation, tell us what would happen.
Steve, the indictment showed that a correctional officer actually ordered the stabbing of an inmate after that inmate filed a complaint against the CO and cost that CO his position in a particular housing unit. Now, this is a live look down from Chopper 16 at ECI.
This is not the first time this correctional facility has had a violent incident.
They really need to make significant changes so it doesn't happen again, and I feel that it really could happen again unless something is done.
Coming up, what happened to this prison counselor in 2004 that prompted her to make these comments? That's when WBOC News at 6 continues.
Well, bringing peace to the Middle East. Coming up, how the Secretary of State plans to ease tensions between Israelis and Palestinians. Also in this morning's Top Talkers, not just a pretty princess. How Carrie Fisher's influence extended beyond her role in the Star Wars movies. Plus 11,000 pounds of Waterford crystals. The New Year's Eve ball in Times Square is ready to drop. It's 5:09 on WBOC News this morning.
It's coming up here at 6, a Maryland bill that has to do with bills. A state lawmaker thinks the list of state symbols should include a certain kind of duck.
Still ahead here at 6, they say you can't really understand a person until you walk a mile in his or her shoes.
But WBOC's Madeline Overturf had to drive several miles on this woman's bus before she understood what it takes to be a school bus driver. That story coming up next on WBOC News at 6.
Now, WBOC News at 6, Delmarva's news leader.
The United States has a new president.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
With those words, Donald Trump was sworn in as our nation's 45th president this afternoon. Good evening. I'm Paul Butler.
And I'm Jacqueline Carley, in for Steve Hammond. This is WBOC News at 6.
Well, thousands of spectators were in the nation's capital today to help welcome in a new administration and say goodbye to the old one. There were lots of people from Delmarva actually in the crowd, and of course the lawmakers who represent the peninsula in Congress were there as well. Trump said as president he will make decisions on behalf of the people sooner rather than later.
The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. Do not allow anyone to tell you that it cannot be done.
Now, the new president has said one of his first priorities will be to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare. WBOC's Todd Carley is part of our team in Washington tonight. And Todd, you spoke with some lawmakers about the plan that's already been set in motion.
Yeah, Jackie, that's right. Obamacare, of course, is the most partisan of issues, certainly with this new Congress. That was represented a couple of weeks ago when Republicans assumed control again of Congress in the new Congress 2 weeks ago in the Capitol behind me.
Health systems and others on the shore who agree, these are hospitals who agree that getting rid of the Affordable Care Act will have really negative consequences.
Republican Congressman Andy Harris, who represents the lower shore, has a different focus. He says if they can't repeal the whole thing, certain provisions must go.
I think major parts, particularly the federal government coming in and telling every American exactly what kind of policy they have to buy and then mandating that purchase, I think is something that America just didn't find very attractive.
Democratic Senator Tom Carper had a hand in crafting the Affordable Care Act. Like other Democrats in Congress, he is concerned Republicans will repeal the health care law without a suitable replacement. But he agrees the law needs improving.
If our Republican friends come up with an idea that actually provides for affordable health care, does as good or better job as the Affordable Care Act, God bless them. And I suspect you'll have a lot of Democrats to support them.
Carper says that there's a long gap between repeal and replace. 20 million people who have obtained health insurance under Obamacare will be left without. And now that Donald Trump has assumed the presidency, the effort to repeal Obamacare certainly will begin to pick up even more momentum than it already has.
Well, Todd, it sounds like Delmarva senators are fairly united in the way they're approaching Republican efforts on Obamacare.
Yeah, all the senators from Delmarva, Virginia, I should say Maryland and Delaware, of course, Democrat, they've been very consistent in their message. They are willing to work, they say, with President Trump and the Republicans to try to fix Obamacare. They all agree it does need some tweaking, but they've been very consistent and unanimous in their concern in saying that if Republicans repeal it without a plan to replace it, that would be very harmful to millions of Americans. Republicans, for their part, have said they do have a plan. They just haven't offered very many specifics.
Thanks, Todd. Well, there were thousands, tens of thousands of people participating in today's inaugural events in D.C. And WBOC's Tom Lehman got up close to the action. He joins us live tonight from the Capitol. And Tom, you're lucky you beat the crowds.
Yeah, that is definitely the case here in the nation's capital. Now, for people who ended up coming into town, it may have been a very early morning. Bill Eastham and his girlfriend Maya got to D.C. through the New Carrollton station in Maryland Friday morning. He's a Trump supporter and she supported Clinton, but they both agreed to go to the inauguration with each other, no matter who won.
Really looking forward to it. I've been looking forward to it ever since we got the tickets. I mean, this is like one of those bucket list things you never thought come true, and it's coming true.
Not everyone who visited D.C. was quite as supportive. There were numerous demonstrations from groups bearing anti-Trump signs and apparent clashes with police. Even as Trump addressed the crowd, there were thousands of people still waiting to get through security barricades. You could see both supporters and protesters outside of those gates. Now, even though the main event was wrapping up for many people, there was still plenty of festivities on the way through the weekend. Karina Renee Joy is one of the people heading to the inaugural ball. Wearing a dress she dubbed Trump red in color, Karina says she's backed Trump since his announcement speech.
It was just music to my ears, and yeah, I've been in it for him ever since and never had a doubt that he would win. Never doubted that this day would come.
And speaking of events still to come and of demonstrations, there is the Women's March on Washington tomorrow as well here in the nation's capital.
Tom, thanks. And there were plenty of people all across Delmarva sitting down at home or at work to watch the inauguration. And some of them were confident in our new president's ability and hopeful for the future of the country. But others weren't as optimistic.
I think he's going to be a good president. I have supported him from the beginning. And for all the naysayers, I think we should all give him a chance.
Donald Trump is a millionaire. I don't think he's should be the president, but if you voted for him, y'all feel he's the president, that's what y'all got to do.
Now, today's transfer of power meant a happy homecoming for Delaware boy Joe Biden. The former vice president and his wife took the Amtrak train they know all too well to get from D.C. to Wilmington after Trump's inauguration. That's Delaware's congressional delegation with them, Senators Chris Coon, Tom Carper, and Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. Now, back in Delaware, the Bidens were greeted by a welcome home rally at the Chase Center in Wilmington.
Home is where your character is etched. It's where your values are shaped and where your view of the world is formed for all of us, every one of us in here. My character, my value, my view of the world, it all comes from this state.
Now, that rally was in Newcastle County, of course, but people from Kent and Sussex County showed up to welcome home the man some called Uncle Joe.
And WBOC's Madeline Overturf shows us why some Delawareans came and why they're overjoyed to have their favorite son home for good.
Thousands of people came out here to the Chase Center in Wilmington today to welcome home Joe and Jill Biden. Now, they came from all over, but everyone we spoke with said the same thing. They're here to say thanks. The only thing louder than the band was the cheering from the crowd. Corey Lewandowski took off work in Seaford to welcome the Bidens back home. She says Biden is a man of the people.
He is a person, he's a human being, and he never lets that sort of side disappear from him. You always can see that, you know, he's here for us as people and not as sort of some big wig in it. So I really appreciate that about him.
And it's not just adults welcoming home Joe and Jill. Elementary schoolers from Delaware made these paintings you can see hanging here in the Chase Center to say welcome home to the first state. Kim Lewis brought her 2 children from Camden to acknowledge the years Biden spent in politics.
We just thought it was very important to welcome home someone that did so much for our country and represented the state of Delaware.
And according to her daughter Natalie, the qualities he embodied in politics as well.
He's more trusting than other politicians.
Joe Conaway from Georgetown worked in state politics with Biden in the 70s. He says he hopes Biden knows how much he's done for Delaware and how much more there is to do.
We started together and we're going to finish together, although neither of us are finished. We cannot let people with that kind of talent, especially in this day and time, to be left sitting on the sidelines.
Lots of people with the same message in Newcastle County. Along with speeches from elected officials, there were many performances, and organizers say the whole purpose of the event was to welcome back the Bidens and thank them for their service not only to Delaware, but to the United States of America. Reporting in Newcastle County, I'm Madeline Overturf, WBOC News, Wilmington.
And later in the broadcast, we will check back in with Todd and Tom. But coming up next here on WBOC News at 6.
A highway on Maryland's Eastern Shore is getting a new traffic pattern, and what you need to know if you drive on Route 404 for the rest of the year. That's all coming up next on WBOC News at 6.